Their words built empires, shattered lives, and left scars on entire civilizations. Number 5. Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche wrote for the few, for those strong enough to burn the old maps and walk into uncharted thought. But his words became weapons in hands he never intended to arm. The Übermensch, his call for a higher form of humanity, was meant as a personal crucible, not a blueprint for tyranny. Yet in the political vacuum of a humiliated nation, it was recast as racial destiny. His will to power, a cry for self-overcoming, was stripped of nuance, transformed into a justification for conquest. By the 1930s, the Nazi regime had embedded his ideas into their ideological bloodstream. Nietzsche's sister, an ardent nationalist, curated and altered his notes to align with their worldview. The result? A philosophy that once challenged the complacent became a rallying cry for absolute domination. A mind can spark a revolution of thought, but in the wrong hands, that spark can ignite the century's darkest inferno. Number 4. Aristotle is remembered as the architect of logic, ethics, and political theory. But beneath the polished image of the philosopher kingmaker lies a vision of humanity divided, permanently. In his Politics, Aristotle declared that some people are natural slaves, not metaphorically, not as a product of circumstance. He meant there were humans whose very nature destined them to be ruled, owned, and worked like tools. This was not an offhand remark lost to history. It was a pillar of his political philosophy. He argued that hierarchy was not just practical, it was part of the cosmic order. The master-slave dynamic, in his view, was as natural as the relationship between the soul and the body. For centuries, these words gave moral cover to empires and economies built on human bondage. Roman aristocrats invoked him, colonial powers cited him, slaveholders in the American South used him as an intellectual shield. When you declare inequality to be natural, you strip it of its urgency to be undone. You make injustice seem eternal. Aristotle's brilliance ensured that his justification for subjugation traveled through time, armored in reason. Number 3. Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was not just a political leader, he was a philosopher of revolution, one who believed history could be torn apart and rebuilt by sheer will. His vision fused Marxist theory with an almost messianic faith in permanent upheaval. Society, he claimed, must never settle. Every institution, every tradition, every relationship had to be smashed and remade in the furnace of struggle. This was not an abstract prescription. It was implemented with brutal precision. During the Great Leap Forward, the pursuit of rapid industrial transformation overrode the basic rhythms of human survival. Grain was seized, communes were enforced, tens of millions starved while reports of abundance were fabricated to protect the ideology. Then came the Cultural Revolution. Children were turned against their parents. Teachers were humiliated by their students. Ancient texts and artifacts were destroyed, not by invaders, but by citizens purging their own heritage. It was philosophy as a weapon, one aimed inward. Mao's writings framed all of this as necessary. Struggle was life's engine. Purity could only be forged through destruction, and the individual was nothing compared to the revolutionary whole. When philosophy strips away the sanctity of the individual, there is no floor to how far it can fall. Number 2, Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger was one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century and one of its most compromised. His philosophy centered on the concept of being, the deep, primal question of what it means to exist at all. But alongside his intellectual brilliance ran an unflinching allegiance to the Nazi regime. Heidegger didn't just quietly join the party, he actively reshaped his academic role to align with it. As rector of Freiburg University, he purged Jewish faculty, imposed ideological conformity, and framed the Nazi Revolution as a philosophical awakening. In his lectures, political loyalty was recast as existential duty. Nationalism was presented as a path to authentic existence. And the state, not the individual, became the vessel of meaning. Students came to his seminars to explore the nature of being itself, and left with the idea that allegiance to a totalitarian state was not only rational, but metaphysically necessary. Even after the war, Heidegger never issued a full renunciation of his Nazi involvement. Instead, He buried it under dense, ambiguous language, leaving future generations to debate whether his philosophy was inherently corrupted or simply misused. Number 1. Plato is often remembered as the architect of idealism, the philosopher who dreamed of a perfect society, but his vision of that society carried shadows most people ignore. In the Republic, Plato outlines a rigidly stratified order. A ruling class of guardians would decide truth itself, controlling education, art, and even the breeding of citizens. The masses, they would live within a carefully constructed illusion, told only what served the stability of the state. For Plato, censorship wasn't a flaw, it was a necessity. He argued that myths and controlled narratives were tools to guide the population toward what he considered virtue. Dissent wasn't merely disruptive, it was a threat to the harmony of the whole. In his ideal city, personal freedom gave way to a collective script. Love, ambition, and even family ties were subordinated to the needs of the system. Those who did not fit the mold weren't reformed. They were removed. It's tempting to see this as harmless theory, but in practice, such thinking laid the groundwork for centuries of regimes that saw themselves as philosopher kings, justified in shaping reality for the greater good. The danger here is timeless. Once you accept that truth belongs to a chosen few, all that's left is to decide who those few will be. The philosophers you've just heard about shaped nightmares disguised as visions. Some still echo today, quietly influencing the world you live in. If you want to keep uncovering the truths most would rather stay buried, subscribe, like, and stay ready for what's next.